Hello dear viewer, and welcome back to my channel Mage. Last episode, we left off in a quagmire of bad data and spaghetti code, and I said I had a plan. Well, like all good plans, several liberties were taken during the execution, and ultimately everything got derailed from the original outline. Yet, somehow, we got there in the end. My dear viewers, I am proud to present to you our new, lean, mean, boid breeding machine! But how did I get here, and what has really changed? My original plan was to completely restart the project and rebuild the code one class at a time. This, dear viewer, was a terrible idea. In my experience, it's generally bad practice to restart instead of refactor, especially with modern IDEs, which can find usages and quickly rename, edit, and move methods, classes, and files, all much faster than going through manually and redoing things. However, I had decided to try starting over anyway, because of some of the built-in features of Pygame, the library which I was using to display the simulation. Now I don't want to dive too deeply into the code, but briefly, Pygame has a data structure called sprites that can be operated on very quickly. I had hoped to convert the Boid data structure that I had designed myself into these new sprite data structures, but I had some problems integrating my own code with the libraries, and I also discovered that I could quickly load an image in my existing code rather than rewrite everything, so I abandoned the restart in favor of a refactor. Refactoring actually went much smoother than I thought it would, and I was fairly quickly able to reproduce the original simulation in a much more efficient manner. And I took a few minutes to design a much cooler looking Boid than the boring triangles of versions past. While working on the refactor, I started to notice some real problems with the Boid rules themselves, thanks to the research I did for my other video, What's a Boid Anyway, and began attempting to try and sort those out. Have you forgotten about my plan, dear viewer? I definitely did not start fixing the Boid rules before finishing the general code refactor, because I totally remembered my plan at this point. Okay, but really though, I saw how many problems my Boid rules had, and I kinda got sidetracked. I was not adding up the right vectors, and all my Boids were looking at neighbors that were too far away. It was a mess. A few rewrites later, and I was able to get that fixed. See how much smoother the Boids move now in the simulation? It really is starting to look like the examples I've shown so far in the series. But I think we can still do better. I did some more refactoring at this point and was able to remove a bunch of redundant and inefficient code. You can't really see a difference in gameplay, but if you check the system resources being used, there would be a noticeable decrease. But, dear viewer, I still had a much bigger problem as far as breeding was concerned. My horrible fitness function. My fitness function was doing a very poor job of identifying good species of Boids. I was measuring a wide variety of things like the time the Boids were alive, how many points they scored, the distance to the flock, the difference from the flock goal direction and their Boid direction, and just a whole bunch of other things that ultimately I think just canceled out and didn't give us any meaningful result. So I pulled everything out and started the fitness function from scratch. I knew we needed to keep track of the points and lifetime, as the Boids that die after 3 seconds and score 1 point do substantially better than the Boids that die after 1 second and score no points. I also decided that the Boids that survived the simulation should get a bonus, as they did much better than any that died during the simulation. My thinking here was that this would encourage the Boids to get into groups without dying, as this would maximize the points they would get, and it seemed to work. But the Boids were still moving all over the place. This, dear viewer, was when I decided to pull out the big guns. Research papers published on flocking behavior controlled using the genetic algorithm. Luckily, I had already found this amazing paper that had a detailed explanation of their fitness function. Now, it wouldn't work as is with my code, but after some modification, I added the most relevant parts to my fitness function: rewarding alignment and goal attraction. Now the Boids get a bonus for matching the direction and speed of the flock, as well as the flock heading in the same direction as the goal. And bam! My fitness function is rewarding the good species and punishing the bad ones. Time to start breeding. So all loaded up with the new changes, I was ready to try them out. I set up the simulation to run for 25 generations with 24 species per generation. This created around 500 different models of flocking to use the new rules. Each species was given 10 seconds to perform and try and survive. Things start out much as they did before, but now you can sort of see the advantages developed each generation. They begin by individually heading towards the goals and avoiding the walls, as these have the biggest initial effect on their fitness score. As the simulation continues, they worked out how to avoid hitting each other and to match speeds with their neighbors. And from there, the changes become much more subtle. The advantageous genes quickly spread through each of the 24 species, but there's still a bit of variation due to how the breeding works. This is why some species are jerky or spread out, and other species in the same population are very, very smooth. So 25 generations later, this was the best result. I don't know about you, dear viewer, but that looks pretty solid to me. I think I could still optimize the fitness function from here to make it better, but I'm also worried about adjusting it too far and going back to where we were. I think that for now, this is as far as we can evolve the Boids using the rules from the initial simulation. So where to from here, dear viewer? It's time to start playing with the big coding channels and try out using neural networks to control these bad Boids. I'm planning on releasing a video explaining those in depth, as they are a little too complicated to gloss over in the conclusion of this video, but the important thing is that they are the first genuine attempt at machine learning that I'll be applying to these Boids. They won't be given any of the rules we've used so far, and we'll have to figure it all out from scratch. And with that, this episode of PyBoids is complete. I hope you enjoyed this update to my continuing adventures in AI programming. Please feel free to post any questions or comments you have below, and I will thoroughly endeavor to follow up. If you enjoyed this video or had a chuckle, please leave a like and consider trying some of my other content. If you like what you see, please consider subscribing, and as always, thank you for watching, dear viewer.